Hello, I'm Andrew Hara, the host of the Bomb Squad. I wanted to tell you about my movies. All are available on Tubi, which is a free streaming service. The last one is a zombie drama about how a pandemic and isolation could drive a group of people mad. When the virus hits, John finds himself alone and scared until he meets Michael, his protector. But when Karina, another survivor, enters the mix, everything that John and Michael knew will be turned on its head. The last one is a zombie virus movie that's somehow even more relevant today. Plus, it has zombies. Check it out. Borderland is a mexploitation film about living in El Paso. When Sarah finds herself in debt to the cartels, she has until sunrise to find some missing monies with the help of her executioner. Borderland is a true midnight movie and a lot of fun. Finally, the documentary Humble Spirits tells the story of the Hahn family, including champion Jennifer Hahn from El Paso, Texas. The entire Hahn family has grown up in the combat sports and has helped shape who they are both in and out of the ring. Humble Spirits, a family of fighters, is the perfect documentary for boxing fans of all ages. Check out Tubi to watch all my films. Finally, The Empty Space, winner of multiple awards, including the Sacramento Horror Film Festival's Best of the Fest, is a cosmic horror about Amy Andrews, who's dealing with anxiety and depression after a violent attack that killed her husband. As she tries to find herself, she starts to lose her grasp on reality. Or could it be something much more sinister? The Empty Space is full of twists and turns, with Grace DeWilder of Rue Morgue magazine calling it a powerful film full of excellent performances by practically every cast member. All of Andrew Hada's movies are available to rent or buy on streaming services such as Tubi, Amazon, and many other places. We hope that you help support us by watching these films. Now, let's start the Bomb Squad. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Bomb Squad. Theme months. Do you like them? The numbers say no. Andrew says yes. Welcome back to the Bomb Squad, guys. We are covering. I've decided that, because we were trying to figure out what to call this theme, and I think we can stop because we found a name. It's called "We're watching movies that have the most realistic cops of all time."
Absolutely, yes. And Larry Fishburne.
The
Larry
bigger
Fishburne.
pieces of shit they are, the more
Yeah.
realistic it is
And
typically.
on today's episode, we are covering another classic film from 1990, directed by Abel Ferrera, The Horniest Man Alive,
True.
starring Christopher Walken, David Caruso. We got to get him out of the way so we can get to the other names. Laurence Fishburne, Steve Buscemi. Buscemi's in this, of course
Buscemi.
he is.
It's a stacked cast.
Wesley Snipes is in there.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what, guys? I know what you were thinking. Is my boy back? And of course he is, playing a character who should be named Benny, but his name is Tanner in this one. But he plays the Benny type character. Roger Guinevere Smith is back again
Absolutely.
to play a shady whatever. I don't remember what he's doing, but I know it's shady. And this
there.
is we're covering
he was
1990s King of New York. One
Yeah.
of my favorite films. So Joshua, why don't you take us down to New York and tell us exactly what this king is doing?
Okay, so Frank White, a drug lord, gets out of prison after several years, I think like 30 years. And he begins to enact a plan to become the titular king of New York.
Incorrect.
Truly.
He was already the king of New York.
Well,
The official king, the
in
official
his
king.
mind, he was the king.
Yeah.
He wants to legitimize it.
Mhm.
So
It's kind of funny because, at the very beginning, he's in prison and he's getting out. And, just the way that Christopher Walken walks from the prison cell to the outside, you're like, oh, yeah, that's the king of New York right there. He's got it. He's got the fucking Frank White. If you've ever listened to Biggie Smalls, you've heard the name Frank White before, because Biggie Smalls literally put Frank White on every single track on his debut album, Ready to Die. He's a very popular character, but Christopher Walken plays Frank White, who has gotten out of New York and is now he's gotten out of prison and he's joined back for New York. And I think one of the things that's going to make this a little bit hard to talk about is that it is kind of it's just a hangout movie. The general plot is that he's just trying to take over New York. There's nothing else to it.
And it doesn't start for like a while. Like it had been
It
going for a
doesn't
minute,
stop.
and like I
Yeah.
was into everything, and I loved all the characters. But then I was like, wait, what are they doing?
Mhm.
And then
There's no talking for about 15 minutes in the beginning of this movie.
yeah,
yeah, it's him walking through the prison, and then it's him. He's leaving the prison in his extremely stylish trench coat, and it's like him and like at sunset, just driving through New York, and it looks
Yeah.
so good.
It
And
really
yeah,
does.
you're just like, oh yeah, there might be a plot at some point in this
Right,
And then
movie.
like and then there's like these two drug dealers and they're just kind of talking and they're violently murdered and someone gives them a note and says, "Read this, puta." And the note
Yeah.
says something like the king is back. And it's like, "Oh, that's the kind of movie we're watching."
right.
And then we cut to make sure you know this is going to be an old timer. So we cut from dead drug dealers to the greatest actor of our generation, Steve Buscemi.
hmm
And what is he doing in that? He's like making drugs.
Yeah,
He's
he's
like
he's doing that.
cooking.
He's testing the purity.
Steve Buscemi can never play like just the criminal. He always has to play like the nerdy, neurotic criminal who's just kind
Yeah.
of there.
Yeah, the one
Yeah,
who like dropped out of college and then
Yeah.
fucking fell in line with these guys somehow with his chemistry background.
So, yes. So they're all there and they're talking to some Mexican, or I think they're Cubans at this point. And like that's where Laurence Fishburne shows up. And you guys, I know we said to watch Into Deep and then watch Deep Cover. Watch Deep Cover and then watch King of New York to see how versatile Lawrence Fishburne is.
For real.
it is. It's yeah, because he's playing a drug dealer, but it's so diametrically opposite to
Mhm.
Deep
Right.
Cover. Like it's
Yeah.
completely.
Absolutely.
It's
Night and day, for sure.
And
Yeah.
it's so funny because it's kind of like he plays one of those guys where it's like, how has this guy not been murdered already? Because he's not just like
Yeah, or
loud
OD'd.
and yeah, he's not just loud and violent, but he's incredibly annoying. And like
Yeah.
Lawrence Fishburne gives him this like laugh where it's like, and every time he does it, you're like, man, I hope this guy dies.
Yeah, dude, he's such an asshole. Like,
He-
without even really meaning to be, he's just like
He-
naturally like a
and
He's
douche.
almost like the joke. Yeah, like even not even in a criminal context when he's just ordering food. He's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
abrasive to
Yeah, we'll
everyone
get to that
around
scene
him.
later.
And he's
Yeah.
always
But
just like
there's-
moving, and his
Yeah.
shoulders never stop, and he's
He's
clapping.
like a shark.
Yeah, he's
Like, there's this-
absurd.
So they are buying drugs from the Latinos. I don't remember where they're
Mhm.
from.
Somewhere, yeah.
And one of the things that Lawrence Fishburne says, because the guy goes, "Oh, we're gonna raise the price on you by 5%," and then Lawrence Fishburne's like, "What do you mean? We had a deal?" And the guy goes, "Oh, we got to cover expenses." And then Lawrence Fishburne goes, "Take the train if you got expenses." And then he gives them a case, and they're like, because he's like, "Okay, we'll buy it." And keep in mind, once we tell you this plan, this was the plan from the beginning.
Right.
But keep in mind that we've watched Lawrence Fishburne essentially bully this guy for like 5 minutes. Go ahead, Williams.
And there's a man running an errand for Lawrence Fishburne to get him a soda, like a root beer, and make it cold because that's how I like my drinks.
It's also like, yes, Lawrence Fishburne, that's how everyone likes their drinks, bro.
He
But
just
yeah, so
loves
there's-
fucking root beer.
Jimmy
Comes
Jump.
up.
And I know what you're saying. Oh, he did that so that. Oh, look, there we got my.
We
little
got a
Jimmy.
guess.
We got Benny.
We
They
got
go, "Oh, Cringer now." They go,
Cringer. Yeah.
Not bad.
You're thinking like, "Oh, he did that to get that guy out of the room," but no, because he wait for that guy to come back with his
Yeah.
drink. And
He
then
was thirsty. Yeah, he wanted
they-
the drink before all this.
It's a lot
they
of
open the
pressure.
case, and there's just a bunch of tampons.
Mhm.
And so the Latino guy goes, "What's this for?" And then Lawrence Fishburne goes, "They're full of bullet holes, puta." And he
Yeah.
takes out 2 guns and just kills everyone. And again, just wasting people's time for no reason. Like he knew he was
Yeah,
gonna kill
for
these
so
people.
long.
But
Yeah.
also, like
An hour
imagine
time.
you're one of Lawrence Fishburne's employees. He's like, "Hey, I need you to go to the store, buy all the tampons they have.
Yeah. And put him
I need
haphazardly
to-
in a case.
I need to fill a suitcase for a pun I'm gonna do 2 seconds before I kill a bunch of people." He's the Joker in this.
And
He's
it's like
And then,
it's not even like heavy like money at all either. Like he would have like felt that case, it would have felt like a box of tampons,
I know.
which is like a pound, maybe.
And so that's when you realize that Lawrence Fishburne works for Frank White, and they've been kind of taking out all these little dealers. And the next move is to go to the big dealers. And so the next scene is one of the most famous scenes. It's the scene in the high rise where they all meet. And it has one of the coolest openings. Like it's half the time it's the poster of this movie, but it's just Christopher Walken like looking at the city and you see it reflecting in his face.
Yeah.
Again, one of the great things about these movies is that how under like no one ever talks about the city of these movies, but the city's so cool. Like it feels dirty and it feels gritty,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's like it feels like we're watching kind of like the worst parts of New York, which I
Hmm.
think makes it really cool. But they go to meet Frank, and you at this point you don't know who these people are to each other. And so the first thing that Jamie tells them is like, "Hey, I heard you took it in prison from other men," and then Christopher Walken goes, "There's some things I won't do," and then they start dancing, and
Yeah.
then they all hug.
And
Yeah.
there's another part that happens where Lawrence Fishburne is drinking out of a cup, and Christopher Walken says, "What's in the cup?" And he says, "Root beer." And then he crushes the cup and he throws it on the ground and says, "Want some?" And
Yeah.
Christopher Walken's like, "What is he?" He goes, "Beep bop bop, oh woo
Yeah,
woo woo,"
it's the
and
best
they're all
thing in
like,
the
"Oh, we're all
movie.
cool again."
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all friends actually, and
See,
that
oh,
is
go ahead.
interesting. Well, because just the whole like thing, and they almost never. I mean, they show it. They don't say they show it, but it's like he like works with the black gangs, and he's the only
Yes.
guy working with the black
Hmm.
gangs
Yeah,
because every other mafioso is just too racist, and that's
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of like his advantage, you know?
But and
right,
that was the thing. I mean, it's even like they even talk about a
Yeah,
little bit in The Godfather where they say that they don't sell drugs; they'll only sell them to the black. So like, I mean, if you've ever watched even one episode of The Sopranos, you know how racist the
right,
yeah,
Italian mob is famously. Like the
yeah,
fact that it's like such a staple of their depiction is not by coincidence. And I think like
yeah,
that I love the way they do it because at one point he goes to talk to these mobsters. Or no, it's not him. He sends his like money guy to go talk to him, and that guy's been
hmm,
having conversations with everyone to see if they can smooth things over. And the mobsters like tell him like, "Hey, you shouldn't even be in this room." And that's why we don't fuck with Frank because Frank fucks with you guys. And like
yeah,
meaning like, you know, brown and black people. But I think that that's kind of like it shows the difference between Frank and everyone else. And
hmm,
it shows like it's an instant like, okay, now I understand this whole guy's deal. Is
yeah,
that Frank isn't like racist, so he just wants to make money, and like everyone else isn't.
right,
Um,
right. It's like the
and
changing cultural climate of America and everything too. It's kind of like what
yeah,
he's ushering in.
yeah, he's
Yeah,
definitely like it. Definitely feels kind of like that new American dream, where it's like I don't know,
right.
he's not going to exclude everyone. He's going to bring everyone in.
Yeah,
Everyone gets a little taste of the pie,
yeah. If you're tired
and
of getting screwed over, come with me. I think it's like
yeah,
that's like his whole slogan.
and that's one of the coolest things at the very beginning. Like he kills the mob guy, and then he looks at his workers and goes, "If you guys want to get some money, come with me." And then there's like another scene where he's hooking up with his hot lawyer without
Yeah,
like thinking about any repercussions of that.
in a
Um,
subway.
yeah, and so they were, and so like then these guys like try to rob him, and he
yeah.
like
He
shows
just
them his
looks like
gun.
any wealthy New York
Yeah.
businessman. Yeah,
Yeah,
with
and then
like a
so he shows them
hot
his gun,
woman.
and they kind of back
Yeah,
off. But then he throws them the cash,
Hmm.
and he says,
Come to
"Hey,
the Plaza Hotel or
come
whatever.
to the Plaza Hotel. I got work for you."
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. He's like, and that's like it's like the big boss move where he's like recruiting everyone who should be his enemy and like kind of like coalescing them, and it's such a
Yeah.
good idea, you
Yeah.
know.
Hmm.
He's just kind of like scraping together this team,
Yeah. People that want
um,
to work.
kind of an
Yeah,
outer heaven type situation. It's good.
Yeah.
Um, it's real good.
I like the way that he like is talking to his lawyer though, like right before they go. Like they're like at this like fancy dinner, and like Frank is kind of like coming back into the New York spotlight, and it's kind of like his like welcome home deal. And then he just like looks at his lawyer, his hot lawyer girlfriend, and it's just like, I want to, you know what I want to do with you? I want to take you to the subway. And that's like the end of the conversation. And I feel like this whole movie just has like goofy fucking lines like that. Like the way that the
yeah,
characters like interact with each other is like goofy to the level that it seems like he might have actually heard this conversation. Like no
yeah,
one's lines feel like lines you've heard a million times. Like there are some like throwaway lines, but like the way that they talk is just like so strange. And I feel like Bad
yeah,
Lieutenant was that way too. Like it's like this kind of tense. You don't really know what anyone's saying or like
Mm-hmm.
what's real or not, and like that was
They're
like a
kind of
really
like
cool.
talking around. It's almost like
Yeah.
in a way it's like realistic because it's like you're getting snatches of a conversation without the whole thing, and
Yeah.
it's almost like you would hear a little bit of that and be like, "What?" and then you just never hear the
Right.
rest.
Yeah.
You know, it's cool. Yeah.
And
Like
then they're on a
Killer
subway
Driller's
kissing, and
kind
you're
of
like, let me
similar.
see.
Yeah. Or
What is it?
Yeah.
like Killer Driller, his first film. It kind of feels similar. It's the other Abel Ferrera film.
Oh, I've
But
never
it's
seen that one.
um but yeah, I think it's that thing where like it almost feels like you're listening in on someone rambling, you know? Like,
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
and it does make it feel realistic because everyone kind of talks like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's great. And I think
Mhm.
like there's that thing where like again, he's of course like the cast we listed. It does also
Yeah.
make up for a lot. Like when you have Steve Buscemi playing a background character, no one's really gonna turn in a C performance, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone just
And
pretty much goes for it the whole time.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think like okay, so after that scene, we cut to some of the other characters. So while Frank has been setting all this up to get up, because Frank does say like, "Hey guys, should we take it easy?" And Jimmy's like, "Who's Lawrence Fishburne?" He goes, "I've been waiting years for this, Frank."
Yeah.
And so they're off. But while they're doing that, we meet the bunch of cops who are following them, and we
Mhm.
meet them. David Caruso is giving the best man speech to one of the other cops. We're gonna
Yes.
call that cop dead in an hour.
Yeah.
And David Caruso is like, you know how like in real life you hear about these terrible speeches that nobody's laughing at and makes people uncomfortable.
Mhm.
David Caruso gives that speech in this movie, and like
Yeah.
nobody laughs. Like he's awkward as hell. It's so uncomfortable because he's like, "Hey man, I guess someone had to get married. No more pussy for you." And then he's kind of like looking around, and nobody's laughing.
So like,
It's like
it's because
a crowd of
I'm very
8-year-olds, dude.
like I've never really seen the appeal of David Caruso as like a cool guy, and this movie almost
I
leans into
know.
like, this guy's a fucking weirdo, and it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they'll use him that way,
Yeah.
like he is unlikable in the extreme, and it works very well in this movie,
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, they really captured like just the way cops are just the worst.
And then like, okay,
Mhm.
so then you're like, well, they're all friends. Maybe they're all hanging out. And then the next scene is everyone drunk, and David Caruso gets his friend's wife and
Yeah.
starts making out with her against her will. Like she's pushing him
Yeah.
Yeah,
off.
he's like, it's a joke.
Come on. Everybody
Yeah.
wants it.
He's like, you just got married. And it's
Yeah.
like, hey guys, did you get real cops to do this? Or what's going on?
Yeah, exactly. It's this fucking Braveheart.
Like I remember like because I heard that speech, and I mean I've seen this movie a bunch, and I remember the speech, and I was like, oh yeah, these guys do suck. And I was like, but you know, maybe it's not. And then like he kisses his wife,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, yeah, these guys suck.
Although Wesley Snipes is one of the cops, but he can't help but be the coolest cop because he
Yeah.
just looks so cool.
Yeah.
Wesley
he's
Snipes is such a
Snipes.
cool cop that you're like, hey, can you like go on the other side? Or what do you
Right, right.
think?
And there's also another cop that they kind of show a lot who's like this old man who like sits in his
Yeah.
apartment and does reports, but it's like every old cop in this movie is like just like not idealistic at all. Like they're all
Yeah.
just so broken, and like David Caruso is like kind of like a cavalier later on in the movie. Like he like wants to like really take down Frank White, and, like fuck all these people that are ruining the city. And the old guy,
Yeah, he's like, let's just kill him.
"Shut
Yeah,
up, dude."
which is very funny because I almost feel like, obviously, without getting into like modern day stuff too much, but it's like I think that's like the attitude like the NYPD has now. Like, let's just do what we want. We're cops, we
Yeah.
could do it, and then it's very
Yeah.
like kind of funny
Well,
to
and
see that seen as like a bad extreme back then. you
Yeah,
know?
and
Right.
I think
yeah.
like
yeah.
and we'll get into it a little later, but the difference between the cops and the criminals, especially when they're doing stuff, is very telling. But one of the things, so after that, like you find out like Frank then meets with the Chinese gang, and he
Mhm.
tells them, I think it's the Yakuza, but I'm not sure. I don't think they ever specify.
Yeah.
Which
they
is not
just-
Chinese, I think it's Japanese.
Yeah.
But anyway, he tells them like, hey, we want to be with you. We don't want to kill everyone. And then the Asian guy's like, the Asian gang's like, no, we want to go to war. And then they're like, all right.
Yeah.
Like,
we
we're
don't
gonna
want to
murder
join
you.
forces. We want cash.
And so then they kill him. Or no, and then there's another amazing scene. So I know what you're thinking. Someone went up to Abel Ferrera and was like, hey, in this scene, all that needs to happen is Laurence Fishburne gets arrested by the police. And Abel
Yeah.
Ferrera was like, okay, what if for about 2 minutes before he gets arrested, he just orders an insane amount of chicken and then gives some
Yeah.
kids quarters to play video games. But the
Not
whole
like
time he's yelling at everyone.
he's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's such a weird. It's like Tutil will show his duality because he comes in screaming at the cashier,
Yeah.
like chicken, not just like fried and barbecue. I want a mix, and then
You writing this
uh,
down?
and then the cashier's like, "Hey kids, like get away from there," and then he gives the kids money to like play the game or whatever.
Yeah, and he gives an old lady like $100.
He
or
gives the
something.
grandma like $200.
Yeah, he's like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying you need it, but just in case, like it's just kind of being like the kind of community service, which is like, oh, that's like nice, but you're still like an insane asshole.
Right.
Yeah.
Immediately, his friend is like being violently arrested outside, which he
And
cannot
his
see.
friend is in that movie a lot. He's just a background guy. But
Yeah.
he does like when they're arresting him against the chicken shop and they're just pummeling him with shots.
Yeah. But
And
you
he's
can't
still,
hear
like,
him through the
arguing.
glass.
Yeah,
And
His
he's like
screams.
arguing with him like
it's like vaudevillian. Yeah, he's like But
Yeah.
I just like because then they obviously they come in and then violently arrest Jimmy as well. But it's also like imagine you're that employee, that chicken employee, where you're like
Yeah.
you see the worst customer you've ever had, and then a minute later he's like violently arrested. You'd be like, I'm gonna tell this story for the rest of my life.
I
Yeah.
know.
Fuck that guy.
And so so this time they have a witness, so they're very excited. And like within 10 minutes, that witness
He's
no
gone.
more.
Yeah.
And then Wesley Snipes like confronts Laurence Fishburne as he's getting out of jail, and like that old man's confronting the lawyer. The lawyer is very important because she's the one who's keeping him out of trouble.
Yeah.
Because might I remind you, this is the loudest gang in New York. They are not
Yeah.
doing anything.
They murder everyone, anywhere, anytime.
The
And
fact that
so
when
They
he
do
gets
so much
out,
coke.
he literally throws dollars at the cops. Is like, here's for the witness's funeral. It's like,
Yeah.
Jesus,
Yeah.
that's cold.
he tells Wesley Snipes, he goes, here's some flowers for your witness.
Yeah. It's fucking great. Like
brutal.
he
And then
still was doing
Wesley-
coke somehow, even if he was in a holding cell. Like he just is never not fucked up.
So after they lose the witness, the young cops, because it's like David Caruso, married guy, Wesley Snipes, and there's like two other guys, and they're like,
Yeah.
well, we can't do this the legal way, so it's time for us to like do this illegally, and so
Mhm.
they decide to hold it up. And that's the thing, like it's such a good scene because up until this point we've seen Frank kill people, but we've seen them like kind of like, and not to say that killing people like is a good way or bad way, but they're smart about it. They're only killing the people they need to kill. But when
Yeah.
these cops break in, they like kill everyone. They like shooting women.
Yeah.
They like shoot the lawyer for no reason.
Yeah,
they're just
It's
like
like
they
a
act like
major ass
cops.
scene. Yeah.
like
it's
they're not there
very-
to arrest anyone.
And they don't
Yeah.
like they don't tell you. I mean, they actually. I mean, you get the sense that some time has passed because just before that, Frank is like at this like community event, like in his honor,
Right.
where this R&B singer's singing for like 5 minutes
Yeah,
straight.
it's like a
another
river band
Freddie
or-
Gibbs.
another great hangout scene, just him chilling at this thing.
Yeah.
But then they even because like one of the other criminals comes in and is talking like Jimmy Larry Fishburne. He's like, "Oh, you don't sell drugs, you kill people." He's like, "There's no one left to kill. I'm out of work." And it's just kind of like
Yeah.
you get this sense like things have calmed down to the point where it's a little easy and boring now.
Mhm.
Right. They're working on
but
the
it's also-
hospital kind of deal. They're like building a
Yeah.
hospital, right? I think.
It's also a little sad because you see like Frank's like lawyer girlfriend just all fucked up on drugs and like
Yeah. And they do.
Yeah.
And I think that that's another great scene because, again, we are about to see the cops brutally murder everyone. But it also shows that, like, Frank's lifestyle isn't sustainable either. Like, this lawyer
Yeah.
starts off so smart. And by, like, the end of it, before she gets murdered, and she gets murdered, which is another thing. But before she
Yeah.
gets murdered, she's, like, so strung out that she doesn't even, like, know who she's with.
she's
you
just
know?
like
And so-
sleeping with her. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a funny scene too because it's in this like pitch black room where like women are dancing naked and stuff, and Frank is like taking a phone call with music just blasting,
Yeah,
and you're
yeah.
like, what a horrible way to conduct business, just
Right.
yelling into the phone over the loudest music possible.
Yeah. So then,
Yeah.
like, they're all fighting, and then, like, Laurence Fishburne gets away. and Wesley Snipes is chasing him. And then we get what's the best death scene of all time. And Lawrence,
Oh my god.
spoilers, we'll go watch this movie. But Lawrence Fishburne murders Wesley Snipes for really seemingly no reason, just because he wants to. He's there, he's single. And then he's like, hey, where's your friend? And then it's followed by the second greatest death scene of all time because
Yeah.
David Caruso kills the shit out of Lawrence
He
Fishburne.
shoots
Yeah.
him about 12 times.
Right.
Yeah.
And not only that, but Lawrence Fishburne does not die right away. He's like screaming. He's like, why did you shoot me? I can't believe it.
Yeah.
He is scream laughing, both saying kill me, but also laughing about how
Yeah.
like brutally he killed Wesley Snipes. He becomes the Joker fully in that scene
Yeah,
as he's
honestly,
dying.
absolutely.
They literally put the gun against his head as he's like laughing and just kill him because he's too loud.
Yeah.
And then I know what you're saying. Well, that was the two best death scenes of all time. Surely that's it, but you're
Oh, man.
mistaken. Because then it's followed by the best death scene of all time, where then we're at the funeral.
Yeah, we're at Wesley Snipes' funeral, or
Yeah.
maybe
David
like 50 cops died during this, so it's someone's
Right. It's like
funeral.
a mass burial, yeah.
And every cop is there. And David Caruso is so strung up that he's like, fuck this, I'm out of here. And so he like runs to his car and he's like, I'm gonna kill those guys. And then you see a limousine pull up and then you hear someone go, hey you. And then David Caruso looks and then fucking Christopher Walken blows his brains out.
With like a sawn off
with a
shotgun.
this is great because we've seen him quietly kill people before this. We know he could do it, and we know he's at a cop's funeral with hundreds of police officers. He's like, no,
Yeah.
I'm still gonna do it in the loudest way possible, out of spite.
And because he wants the cops to run and find out what he did like immediately.
Yeah.
yeah,
Like just no shame. No
just
shame. At all.
just zipping away in his limo. Yeah,
Yeah.
I will say that, and this is such a crazy thing, that originally Laurence Fishburne was in the Wesley Snipes role, and he wanted to play the Jimmy role, but they had given it to someone else, and so it was James Russo who they had offered it to, and he turned it down. James Russo is a white guy, funnily enough, which would have been crazy.
Yeah.
weird dynamic. Yeah, only the two white guys lived to the end, and then yeah, that was weird.
But James
Yeah.
Russo, he turned down the part, so Laurence Fishburne like begged them to let him do the role of Jimmy. And Abel Ferrera was like, well, then someone have to take your role. And he's like, oh, I think I know a guy. And so Wesley Snipes and Laurence Fishburne were in this kind of like really big star-making turn. Just because they were kind of like, they were just there. And they got the job.
Yeah.
And they were like asked for other stuff. I think that's, especially like when you see Laurence, like if I didn't read that, I would have assumed this role was written for him because he does such a good job.
Yeah,
So-
definitely. Yeah. It seems just so fit for him. He did such a good job.
And so it's crazy to find out, like, oh, it wasn't. Also,
There's also-
before he dies, David Caruso goes, it was the money, puta, before he kills him. Like,
Yeah.
everyone says puta when they're dealing with fucking Lawrence Fishburne.
Right. That scene whenever they were like hunting him too, like they're driving through New York like for a long time having this like car chase, and then they get to this like really, really big like underpass area, and it felt like a war movie. Like it felt like a Vietnam movie whenever Wesley Snipes is like
Yeah, it's like
walking
fog and
through.
stuff.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
like so intense.
Right.
And
There was
then
such-
whenever he
and-
finally what's that?
No, it's like it's such an interesting dynamic too, because when they're in the car, like they're panicking because Frank and Jimmy got away, because they're like, oh, this was all illegal. Like we illegally like killed everyone at like Frank's mansion,
Yeah.
and they're like panicking because like if we don't kill them too, like we're fucked. Like we're gonna go to jail ourselves.
Yeah.
I don't even think that would be the case today. I don't think they'd be
No,
worrying
yeah.
about it at
I
all.
know.
They wouldn't even had to sneak around. They would have just gotten like
It would be on their body
SWAT
cams.
shit. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
it would've
Yeah, they
been
definitely
totally
would have
fine.
been just able to do it.
But I really like the part though whenever like we're talking about Laurence Fishburne just like won't die, and like David Caruso's whole deal is that he just like it fights crime so hard and it just never goes away. And I felt like whenever Laurence Fishburne just like wouldn't die and was just like laughing in his face, that was like the whole point of the movie in like
Yeah.
one scene where it's just like this guy is literally not dying and it's just laughing at you just horrifically and also crying, and like your friend's dead over here, he's like taking everything from your life. And I don't know, that was just like a really, I know we just talked about the scene, but like I thought that was just such a great way to kind of like sum up the whole film, at least from like the cop's perspective.
Yeah,
Like,
it's mostly
No,
kind of
and
the climax, like thematically.
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm glad you
yeah,
brought that up because it is a very important scene, specifically because it's kind of this like it does kind of show you that the point of the movie is like, yeah, this level of violence is you can't solve this with
right,
more violence. You know,
yeah,
it's just you're just gonna end up doing what happens, and I
yeah,
think that that's like kind of an important thing to like add. You know,
hmm yeah, and
but
like
yeah,
the cops like dressed like they have like ski masks on, like they're
mhm.
robbing, like if because they don't really tell you that it's the cops that are breaking into that
Right.
club. Like you kind of figure it out, but like for a moment I was like, did I miss a key plot point here? But then I was like, oh no, it's probably the fucking cops because like they're acting like fucking shady ass motherfuckers.
Yeah,
And
and
Yeah,
yeah,
then not only
so
that, but
they,
like,
yeah,
and if you
he's. Oh, go
and
ahead.
about 10 minutes later, Lawrence Fishburne will scream at the top of his lungs that they're cops once he finds out.
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
because there's one they're escaping and there's one hanging off the car and he pulls off and he's like, it's a cop.
it's the
And then
cop.
that cop dies the most horrible death in the movie,
Yes, this is what I thought you were
going
talking about.
face first into a fire hydrant like 100
Hush,
miles an hour.
hush, hush.
And he
That
like
cop
sticks at him.
that cop deserved to die.
Oh,
He
I
had just gotten
agree.
Absolutely.
married.
Yeah,
That's
it
the
was a
married
married
cop.
boy. Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah.
He didn't do anything. He was like the only
Miss
innocent one,
I
and
know.
he
I
gets
Like he's
mean,
trying
he
to have a family.
participated in this
he gets
assassination.
he
So
gets hereditaried for getting married, and I
Yes.
agree.
this
And he
is
like
so
sticks to
good.
the hydrant. Like his like body is like impaled on it. Like it's so fucked up.
But that's like,
It's
I mean,
so
it is
good.
true. Like the movie does kind of climax here with like Jimmy's death, because the rest of the movie, you realize pretty quickly, like, oh, Frank doesn't have a plan. He's just gonna kill cops until he dies. Like he knows
Right.
it's
Right,
done.
right.
Yeah.
It's an interesting idea because it's almost like it becomes like almost slow paced after this. You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
Yeah,
like
and I think that there's kind of like a cool scene where like it kind of reiterates the point because then Frank goes to see the older cop. I think
hmm
his name is Bishop. He goes to see Bishop and he kind of tells him like, "Oh yeah, the reason that I killed those other gangs is because they were dealing with like human trafficking and child prostitution." And he was like, "So I don't deal with those type of things, so I had to get rid of that in my neighborhood."
Right.
And but like
But
and
I'm the criminal.
yeah, and I think like if you didn't see it from that parallel, where it's like on one hand, Frank has been murdering his way up and down New York this whole
hmm
time, but he's justified in saying like, "Oh well, I was stopping worse crimes," and
Right.
then but
You
it
got to
makes
break a
it
few eggs.
exactly, but it also forces you to think like, well, Frank is clearly wrong, but also isn't this the exact same justification these cops used for Frank? You know, like,
right,
oh,
and
the
because
law wasn't working or whatever.
yeah, they're
Exactly.
like, we have to get this guy. He's killing people. It's like, well, he's only killing like slavers and
Right.
like pimps and stuff like that.
Yeah. And people that are
And
trying to kill him.
it's very yeah, because even the cops like, you can't just kill those people and get away with it. He's like, get away with it. I spent half my life in prison.
I know,
Like
Right.
it's
Right.
and
just
I will say, and William, I want to hear what you think about this because I feel like we're on the same level with the themes of this film about like the violence and stuff. So after that, like Frank leaves Bishop tied up, and then he gets away, and they end
hmm
up on the subway because every cool movie that takes place over like a night does,
Yeah.
and then they like shoot at each other, and Bishop is killed, but Frank like uses a human shield,
hmm
and he kills Bishop. And then he like kind of walks up the stairs, and then he gets in the car, and and then he does the Shane where he leans over and that's it.
Yeah.
Michael Mann told Abel Ferrera that he should have finished the film when he's walking up the stairs. It should have been a cut right there.
Not getting into the
Not
cab.
getting into that, not seeing what happens. And I
Yeah.
think, kind of thinking about this movie again, and you guys can tell me if you agree. I kind of agree with Michael Mann. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Because I
What a
think like
dumbass.
especially at the very end when he grabs that girl, he's kind of
hmm
saying like because they're both shooting at each other. So Frank is saying, or the kind of the idea of the movie is saying, we're doing the same thing. I'm the only one who's being real with what we're doing. Like
Right.
we're both putting everyone in this subway car in
yeah, like I'm
danger.
honest
But
about
I'm
it.
the only one who's got the gun because I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah, we're doing the same thing. It's just I'm more direct with it. And it's
Right.
kind of
Right.
the same thing that he does a lot. Like the cops were willing to break the law to stop criminals, and Frank was willing to break the law to stop. And so I think like letting him live kind of shows like in this world, this like false honor doesn't really work if you're also
Yeah.
playing by their rules.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as far as so you're saying that if he leaves going up the stairs, you like wouldn't see the bullet wound, so he would have
Yeah, you
survived.
wouldn't even know.
Yeah, because
You would
it becomes
assume that
that
he'd
thing where
live.
it's like it's kind. It would have, I guess, like a good example of this working successfully. And people are going to yell at us maybe, but The Sopranos. The
Yeah.
Sopranos. It's like it doesn't matter whether Tony dies at that scene or in a different scene. He's going to
Yeah.
die. Like the world is going to crumble around him, and
Right.
that's what they were trying to get across at that point. And I kind of feel like I would have liked that here. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a pretty good idea.
I can see
I
it.
will say
Yeah.
one thing about the ending though that I did like a lot that I think kind of maybe still plays into that idea, but we'll see. But it's like so he dies in the cab, right? And like he's in the cab. The cab driver sees that it's a guy with a gun and a bullet wound, and so he gets out of his car and he's like telling the cops like, "There's a guy with a gun in my car," like in the middle of this traffic, and like Frank is like dead, like he's like weak, he has no chance of killing anybody, but like all the cops that are playing by cop rules, they take fucking forever to find him.
Right.
Like they don't even find him, and I think that
Yeah.
was kind of showing like the cops that are playing by the rules are never going to find him.
Hmm.
They're never, even though he's
Right.
even dangerous, he's just going to be lost in this city traffic because Frank always just walks away from killing all kinds of people all the time.
Right.
So I did like that a lot about the ending,
Hmm.
and I think, and obviously you wouldn't get that unless you saw him getting shot.
Right.
Um, Honestly, I don't really know how I feel about seeing him live. I think that's an interesting point, but I like that ending scene so much that that's kind of where my mind's at right now.
Yeah,
But
and
I
I
think
also
maybe we
like,
kind of play into it.
and there's also the parallels that we didn't talk about because, like Josh said, at the very beginning, you see him entering the city, and he's kind of seeing everything through the window. And so much of this
Yeah,
movie is from Frank looking out the window, and him
hmm
ending by kind of putting his head against the window and dying is a
totally.
great parallel. And so I
Right.
do agree that it's a good
I
ending.
like
Don't get me wrong,
bookends it. Yeah.
Yeah,
but
yeah. I didn't even catch that.
I agree with Michael Mann was saying, and I kind of like,
Yeah,
and it's a very like, yes, Michael Mann, that is how you would have ended King of New
yeah,
York.
yeah,
But that's not how Abel Ferrera would have ever ended King of New York. Like Abel Ferrera's not
yeah.
that guy. You know, like
This was definitely like this might as well have had a voiceover in it, kind of.
mhm,
Like it's very concrete. Like it's definitely nothing's really vague about it at all.
right.
So I
See,
think
that's
that's what
almost
you're saying is
like
true. Michael Mann could have gotten
it,
away with that, maybe not Ferrara.
it's like interesting to me because it's almost the same way where it's like clearly like kind of like a neo noir, and you
Yeah,
see like Blade Runner, where they insisted that there be a voiceover in it, and it was fucking
Right.
terrible. So then
yeah,
when they did the director's cut, so they're like, no, take that out, and it's like, yeah, you almost see this movie having one without needing it, and it's
right.
like
Yeah.
it's so strong, like visually and everything else, that it's like it would have been redundant, but you could see like lesser directors who
Yeah,
would have been
yeah,
like, no,
Yeah.
no, have him talk over it. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. But yeah, I agree. The intentions in the movie are so apparent that yeah,
Yeah.
you don't need it at all for sure.
Yeah. And I think even like watching this with Deep Cover, Deep Cover is great. It's also an amazing movie. But I do feel like
Yeah,
you can see the kind of hesitation a little bit more in Bill Duke's work than in Abel Ferrera's. Because Abel Ferrera does not give a shit if you don't understand what he's trying to say.
yeah,
Like he's
yeah,
gonna blow past stuff. So like again, like I know Fishburne is very like loud and he says everything that he thinks, but like it also makes it so you don't know whether he's telling the truth. So like
hmm
the thing about the cops, if you're not really paying attention, like it'll go over your head until you see them later.
right.
And I think it's like with Bill Duke, he like really wanted you to get the message he was coming across, and you see
hmm
the difference. I mean, there's voiceover, there's like color palettes, and I think it's like it goes to show that these two movies that are kind of about the same stuff
Yeah,
can be done very differently, and it still
right,
works
right.
very
Still
well.
good effect. Yeah,
Hmm.
Though to be fair, in Deep Cover, half the voiceover is just him speaking in poems, so it's not like
yeah.
useful information. It's just like
Just kind of adds to the palette.
vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you get
It's
So
them
so
hanging
interesting,
out.
like what makes or breaks a voiceover.
I
Like
know.
that's such a
yeah,
mysterious thing, you know. Because like most like little children, I know this is kind of a bit of a branch off. Like little children, that movie, the voiceover is so amazing, but when you listen to it, like you really don't need it that much. But it like
Yeah,
just
but
adds such a
yeah,
great vibe to it.
and to be fair, the voiceover in Little Children is some of my favorite voiceover. Not just in that movie, but in some of the best voiceover I
Yeah,
like. It's what I emulate, you know.
right.
Um,
It's like so
yeah.
literate and like storytelling. Like I don't know,
Hmm.
it just feels like it like a guy's. I guess it feels like someone's reading you the storybook.
Right.
That's what.
Right. And
Anyways, I don't want to get too far off track, but
Yeah. But
it's
I
just such
think
an
it's
interesting
like
thing.
it's always funny, especially with voiceovers, because I feel like if you ask me if I like voiceovers, I'd be like, no, they're pointless. But a lot of my favorite movies, like American Psycho and Fight Club and
Yeah,
The
Goodfellas.
Joker and
I don't
um,
even think the Joker has voiceover
I
in
just because I
Oh,
said Fight Club and I said
it.
Fight Club and American Psycho. And I was like, these are the dude bro movies.
yeah.
But like
Although
Way to go,
I was
Andy.
thinking
assassination.
like, yeah, I was gonna say the assassination of Jesse
Mhm.
James by the
Assassination of
car over
Jesse
Ford
James.
has a good voiceover because it's not
Royal
helpful.
Yeah,
It's
Wes Anderson has kind of perfected voiceovers when he wants to. Sometimes he doesn't
Yeah.
want to.
he's hit or miss.
Taxi
But
driver's a good
it's
one.
it's it's that thing. Like, of course, like, and then you have like Tarantino, who you'll be watching his movie, and then 2 hours in, he'll be like, "Oh, I need a voiceover in this part," and he just adds
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
And it's like
Right.
it's such a crazy like. I think that's cool because it shows you there are really no rules for a movie. Like, if you're writing a
Yeah.
movie and you're like, "Hey, this would probably work real well in a voiceover," fucking put it. It's not gonna
Try it.
matter.
Yeah,
It's
like
gonna
if
Because
it
make
it's
people
one
fucks, it
audio
laugh.
file.
fucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, that's
Delete it.
almost like I almost love like the way like King of New York really does like shift gears. Like it's really slow at the beginning and it's really slow at the end, but it's like super fast paced in the middle.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's almost like, yeah, that's what the story calls for. It's like time for everything to be like crazy, like jumping around, you know? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
hmm And when it doesn't
directing,
need it, it needs it.
storytelling, movies.
It's a
Yeah.
great movie.
It really
But yeah,
is.
it
I'd
really
wanted
is.
to see it for so long, and this is my first time seeing it. And
Is
these
it
two movies
Walken's
back to back
best
were
movie? I
badass.
haven't seen Deer Hunter.
Different. I mean, it's a very different movie for sure,
Yeah,
but
man. Like,
also great.
again, it's like it's like, oh, what is this De Niro's best movie? It's like I don't know, man.
Well,
He's got,
what if you're,
he's got a
you know,
lot of really. I mean, it's Christopher Walken. I mean,
you're talking about Meet the Parents?
I
Is
don't.
that De Niro's
His,
best movie?
his best movie is clearly his best movie is clearly Blast from the Past.
This
Yes.
is
But and
Honestly,
I
I
think
love
it's
that movie.
and speaking going back to our conversation when Josh tried to derail it last time with the same question.
what.
I think it is that thing where it's like when you watch these type of movies, you do ask yourself, is this Christopher Walken's best movie? Because of the fact that it's like these are the
This is
movies that
so
these
good.
guys made, and it's the reason why Christopher Walken shows up in Dune 2. Like
Right.
that. It's the
Right.
reason that Laurence Fishburne is still making movies because of Deep Cover. Like
Yeah.
people saw him back then, and it's like again, you don't, especially like when you see Blast from the Past or when you see The Matrix, and then you see them in these movies, you're like, oh yeah, they don't just do what they're popular about
Right.
doing. These guys can fucking act. They can do
Yeah.
whatever you need them. And
Right.
I think that that's like so. I mean, we made a joke of it, but I do think it adds that valid question of like King of New York, whether it's Christopher Walken's best performance is up for debate, but it's one of his best, and I think that
Yeah.
that makes it worth watching by itself.
Right. Is it iconic?
Of
Absolutely.
course.
Yeah.
If it is it iconic, ask Frank White himself, Christopher Notorious B.I.G. Smalls.
Truly. Truly.
Um, but yeah, any last words? Puta?
Um.
Hey,
It
that
was
shit.
so violent, but it was
It's
so
so
good.
violent.
It's-
Man, what
It,
about
like, really good.
squibs? Oh,
Yeah. They
he
looked
fucking
amazing.
loves squibs. Yeah.
Oh, I loved my fucking favorite thing about the violence was that he would show people get shot to like dead shots like twice. Like people would get hit
Yeah.
all the time and then like they'd get shot again like minutes later and then like flop again like
This-
consistently. And if someone got shot when they were on the ground, he moved the body. He
yeah.
didn't just lay there. He like made him shift and like
Yeah.
that's what young
They
William
they
always
ride,
wanted.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not only that, but I think that this movie has the record for amount of dead bodies who get shot again after they've already been clearly dead.
Yes, absolutely.
Everybody, they're like, he's dead, and he's like,
Make
It's
fucking
like-
sure.
It only feels like too much in the where they're killing the Asian gang, and it's literally like 40 guys
Oh,
getting shot like
everyone has
thousands
Uzis.
of times. Yeah,
that has one of my favorite scenes where that one Asian, like again, this movie. I mean, it's there's parts, of course, that are ridiculous. Dialogue is very
Yeah.
hammy, but there's a part where one of the Asian gang members runs up the limo and gets shot, and he's like, it's like-
Yeah.
that
fucking
scene is
crazy.
just permanently stuck in my head. Yeah.
And this crazy little alleyway, like this, the way they set the scene was just like so good, like this like
Yeah.
tight little street. I don't know. That
Yeah.
was such a good
I
scene.
will say my only issue: not enough Buscemi.
I
He should
Well,
have
agree.
he should
I
have
could have
popped up a little
seen some more
more.
Buscemi.
and any movie before Reservoir Dogs is gonna have a problem with not enough
That's
Buscemi.
true.
Yeah.
He was a very bit player for a long time.
In
So.
EB, not enough.
But I
Buscemi.
think it's again, it's that thing where like I remember when I was a kid, after seeing Reservoir Dogs, Steve Buscemi was my favorite actor, and I was like, and my brother's favorite actor was Clint Eastwood, and he's like, I'm gonna watch every Clint Eastwood movie. I was like, oh, I'm gonna watch every Steve Buscemi movie, and that's why I've watched Trees Lounge and
Yeah.
these $20 movies no one's ever heard of. And it's very
That's-
hard to watch
that's
every
why
movie Steve Buscemi was in.
Yeah.
You've only seen season 4 of The Sopranos because that's
Yeah.
the one season
Yeah.
he's in.
The worst one.
I'll defend
Yeah.
it to the
Tony.
death.
But I mean, it's like that's what that's why I love, and I think it's coming back. You see it even in Dune, where it's like every face is a recognizable face, and I don't mean in like every face is a famous actor. I mean every face is like this guy's a good actor. I've seen him in something else. Like in the original
Yeah.
Dune, they have the guy who's now in Late Night with the Devil, like the guy who's in Dark Knight as a scared Joker follower.
Yeah, I know you're talking
yeah,
about.
And
yeah,
he's
yeah,
in
yeah.
like he's in that movie, and it's just like, oh yeah, this guy's a great
That's the
character actor. He
motherfucking
can
guy.
kind of do whatever
Well,
you
that's
need him to
what
do.
Oppenheimer was the same thing, where he's
Mhm.
like, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
this guy's gonna have 3 lines, but you'll remember his face because you've seen him in a couple."
This guy's
of
gonna have
years."
3 lines, but also it's Casey Affleck.
Yeah.
right, yeah.
We
But,
brought him back
yeah.
from hell.
So guys, next week we're gonna finish, and because we're doing gangster films, we got one more film. And it's gonna be a completely different type of film, but still gangster.
It's Meet the Parents. I
So
already said
join
it.
us next week when we watch Gang Kids. No, we'll tell you next week. Come back then. We'll show it to you.